When enterprise scaling stalls, we blame software architecture, but the actual bottleneck lies in a specific internal failure, the fragmented attention of the human operator. Digital platforms harvest human attention as raw material, selling it as a commodity to the highest bidder. These environments were engineered by behavioral scientists to fragment focus. By exploiting dopamine responses and eliminating natural stopping points, they ensure your attention remains liquid. This creates a specific paradox. While artificial intelligence scales upward in capability, human attention fractures downward. This leaves two distinct trajectories. A focused operator achieves cognitive amplification alongside AI. A distracted operator experiences pure dependency. Technology fills the cognitive vacuum left by an unfocused mind. With each surrendered decision, the human mind weakens. Intelligence relies on the ability to adapt. A mind that cannot maintain focus lacks the prerequisite for self-directed change. Adding advanced AI tools to an organization of structurally exhausted minds accelerates intellectual decline. The technology becomes a crutch rather than a catalyst. The biological tax of this distraction is measured as cognitive residue. This diagram maps human neural architecture. Every interruption leaves a lingering echo in your working memory, degrading performance on the next task. Each algorithmic context switch drops executive capacity by 25%. A mind checking devices constantly before lunch operates at a fraction of its capacity by noon. We diagnose this state as mental fragmentation, the inability to hold a single line of thought paired with the neurological exhaustion of constant context switching. We are seeing a structural deterioration in the brain's ability to develop complex arguments, a state that persists long after the workday ends. When operators are fragmented, the organization loses its capacity for long-range strategic thought. The human judgment required to oversee machine processing simply atrophies. Without addressing the biological cost of cognitive residue, attempts to scale enterprise strategies struggle against the hard limit of human processing power. This brings us to a dangerous assumption in modern corporate culture: the belief that artificial intelligence exists to bypass the difficulty of thinking. This creates AI false mastery, an illusion of competence where an operator feels productive because they are constantly receiving high-quality machine outputs. This flowchart tracks the outcome of cognitive outsourcing. In Path A, the machine delivers a competent result, but because the human did not engage their intellect, they haven't learned. Systemic reliance leads to the atrophy of independent analytical autonomy. Path B, directed attention, requires the human to develop a genuine perspective before reaching for the tool. This active engagement builds the neurological infrastructure required for the high-level judgment that distinguishes human experts. Enterprises that rely strictly on machine output find their strategic ceiling limited to non-obvious, average solutions that offer no competitive edge. Navigating turbulent modern markets requires novel insights. Relying on outsourced logic tethers an organization to outdated patterns. Optimizing operations by outsourcing all cognitive heavy lifting secretly hollows out the enterprise's inner operating system, creating a massive vulnerability in human capability.
To rebuild that system, we utilize productive struggle. The mental friction of a difficult problem builds cognitive capacity. The legacy model on the left shows how avoiding intellectual friction leads to a chaotic reactive state. The synthesis model on the right represents operators who engage with the discomfort of difficult thought to increase their mental reach. We operationalize this through the think before prompting discipline. Step 1 mandates confronting a complex problem entirely offline for a minimum of 5 minutes. This analog window requires you to develop a perspective without internet searches, scrolling, or algorithmic assistance. Once you have developed your own analysis, you bring it to the AI to engage the technology as an intellectual peer. This protocol changes the conversation. You are no longer just querying a database, you are pressure testing your own thinking against a powerful partner.
Enduring the friction of difficult thought is the mandatory prerequisite for anyone who intends to use AI as a catalyst rather than a crutch. Understanding this protocol is insufficient for transformation. The gap between theory and results is usually caused by a reliance on temporary motivation.
Motivation fluctuates like the weather. A discipline model, however, locks in a reliable system that operates regardless of your emotional state. The daily focus ritual is a scheduled, non-negotiable block of cognitive practice. The ritual begins with an analog constraint. You must physically separate yourself from networked devices to deliberately sever the distraction loop. During this block, you direct your attention toward one of these 4 focus targets. Pillar 1 is problem decomposition, mapping out the constraints and solutions of a complex issue offline. Pillar 2 is paradigm mapping, tracing recurring negative outcomes back to your subconscious beliefs. Pillars 3 and 4 focus on the deep comprehension of dense text and mapping complex projects without context switching. You track progress through metacognitive tallying, making a physical mark every time your focus breaks. This converts subjective struggle into objective data about your capacity. Completing this ritual for 7 consecutive days provides the first piece of evidence that you are capable of operating a system independently of your motivation. When these individual cognitive rituals systematically aggregate across an entire enterprise organization, the overall macro environment begins to fundamentally shift. This sequence traces how biological focus drives high-level performance. Step 1 shows that directed attention primes your brain's filtering mechanism. What you consistently attend to determines whether you perceive an event as a threat or an opportunity. That perception then dictates behavior, shaping the strategic decisions you make every hour. Behavior, repeated over time, forges a new identity, both for the individual and the enterprise. These exponential trend lines track the final stage, where a self-directed identity produces outcomes that are beyond the reach of a fragmented organization. Control over the internal mind provides a strength that outside events or advanced tools cannot replicate. Strategic scaling is achieved by synthesizing a sovereign, focused human intellect with advanced AI frameworks. The human mind remains the primary director of the system.